Hey friends, welcome to Embracing Your Season. I'm your host, Paige Klingenfield. Thank you so much for joining me this week for an all-new episode of the show. We have another amazing guest joining me today, but before I tell you about her, I want to tell you a little bit more about Homeward, the ministry that supports and sponsors this podcast. Homeward is a not-for-profit ministry reaching around the world to help families succeed. We'd love to invite you to consider becoming a partner in this exciting and life-changing outreach. Your prayers and financial support goes directly to make a difference in the lives of families. Your gift of any amount will help Homeward continue to provide free podcasts, blogs, the Homeward YouTube channel, and so many other family ministry outreaches. We believe you can reach out to the parents and marriages and bring hope and healing that will change the trajectory of families for eternity. So go to homeward.com and click on the donate button to find out more. All right, so back to the show. My guest today, friends, I'm so excited for you to meet her. I have known her for over a decade. Her name is Sara Baldwin. Sara is a co-founder of Story House Ministries, where she serves as the executive director and a licensed mental health counselor. She's always been fascinated with stories and how people have the power to change their own. Story House was created to make a safe place for people to talk, heal, and transform their stories. Sara and her husband, Jonathan, love working together in the ministry and raising their 4 super adorable children, all starting with the letter B, which you'll hear more about during our conversation. You can find out more about Sara by going to thestoryhousecounseling.com. Now, at the end of the show, I'll share with you some of my takeaways from the conversation, so be sure to stick around for those. Let's get going on my conversation now with Sara Baldwin on this edition of Embracing Your Season. Well, I am so excited to have my friend and amazing guest on the show today. Her name is Sara Baldwin. Sara, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love hanging out with you, Paige. So anytime I get to do that, I'm good with it.
Right. Even if it's like a podcast, like we love hanging out over coffee and board meetings and all of that. We just take what we can get, can't we?
It usually doesn't include like recording and all that, but we'll deal today. We'll deal with that.
That's right. Gosh, how many years have we known each other? And share the story of how you even became connected with me and my clinician practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all the moms out there will connect with this. I remember everything based on like when was I pregnant with which kid.
Right.
So
Yep.
I was pregnant with Beckett and he's 10. So we've known each other for 10 years. I had started the grad program at Huntington University and Gret Macklin was like, "Hey, I need you to know Paige. Like, I just need you to know her. Like, here's her number." Like, I feel like she was like matchmaking, like, these two people
Mhm.
have to be connected. And so I remember calling you and our first phone call, it was just like, kindred spirits. I was like, I want to know all the things that you do because you really connected the faith and counseling component for me. And I have just seen you as a big sister. And so I'm like, hitch my trailer to you. Like, I want to go where you're going because you've just taught me so much. So that's how we got
Yeah.
connected.
What I think is so fun for the listeners out there is sometimes when you are a part of a private practice, you get locations based on whatever's the cheapest. So if there's like no overhead or if it's, the least amount of overhead. And so what was so amazing about the private practice I was a part of is that it was a satellite site, but it was within my church, but they had no office space. And so I had to offer counseling services in the infant room. And so we would have clients join us, and there is
Uh-huh.
like swings and baby toys. But like the worst part is those are the baby toys that just go off without anybody like touching it. And then all of a sudden you
Right?
hear, "Hi." And it's like in the middle of a session, and you're just like, this is so weird. So it's almost you
I
apologize.
forgot about that.
I know. Isn't that so funny? Yeah.
Uh-huh. I do.
So
Like, I think from that season, I remember one thing like that I just learned from you right up front was like to just be yourself in the counseling room. Like, don't put on a face, don't be this expert, professional, like polished person. Just be yourself. And like, I have carried that through, and it's been a huge part of like how Storyhouse does things and all that. That's where I work. And then I need to share this story. Can I make it story time about Paige for a
oh
second? Do
my
you
gosh.
care?
I don't know.
I'll
I'm
make
a little worried.
I'll make it quick, but it's so good, Paige. Like, it just like explains you and your heart and like how you've just taught me, both as a counselor but as a woman. So I had an issue when I was interning with you, it was like a personal issue and I was struggling and I texted you and you're like, hey, come over. We can talk. And I remember coming over to your house and Paige, you had laundry everywhere.
Yes, most likely. Yes.
Like they're clean in baskets.
Yep, that's
And
typical.
you sat and folded laundry while I talked with you. And I was like, I want to invite people into my home and see my laundry baskets and be like,
Hmm.
sure, I'll talk to you, but I'm going to fold laundry while I
Mhm.
do that. And like, I don't know, that's just been huge. So I was like, I'm not getting through this podcast without sharing that
Oh
story.
my
That was
gosh.
my personal commitment.
That
So
is so funny. Yeah, gosh, and that's still the status of my house today, is that it's all clean. It's just still in the baskets.
mine
Can I
too.
get an amen? Yeah,
Amen. Yep.
right.
Lots of
Oh
baskets at my house.
gosh.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
what an awesome story. Thanks for sharing that. I hadn't even remembered that, so that's great. But
Yeah.
let's hear more about your family and where you're at today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my husband and I have been married for 15 years. We were high school sweethearts and grew up in youth group together. And then we've done youth ministry for the last 15 years together. So, that's kind of us. And then we have four littles at home. So, I was just sharing with you that our oldest is 12 and much taller than me.
That's incredible.
And then
Yeah.
we have the 10-year-old who I was pregnant with when I did practicum with you. And then we have Bear, who's 7. And then I guess I didn't share the other name. So Bowen's 12, Beckett's 10, Bear, we love the bees. So you'll have to forgive us, but we just love it. So Bear is 7. And then we have a little girl, and her name is Brighton. We call her Bright, and it's very fitting for her. She is the bright spot in our lives. She is sassy and fun. And I'm having to figure out the girl thing for sure.
Oh, after 3 boys, you certainly do. It is just a different, set of skills and, like, the way that you parent. It is, it's
Yes.
fascinating.
Yes, it
Gosh.
is. Absolutely.
So
So.
you also are the founder or co-founder of a counseling practice, here
Mhm.
locally where we are at. We're in the Northeast area of Indiana, and so tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Story House is a professional counseling ministry. My husband and I founded it together. Just really felt like our community needed this, and there are not enough counselors to go around for the need here. And just having that faith foundation is what we want to be about. So, really big on just helping people heal, but only like, I guess that's part of it. But the big part is helping people thrive. So, like, I don't want to just help people reduce their symptoms and things like that, but like, let's dream again. What would it look like if you got healthy? Like, what could you go and do? And so then it's just such a rewarding job because we have 16 people on our staff now who they are doing this work in all these rooms. And I'm like, I just wish I could sit in on it and see the healing and the growth and all of that. So that's Story House.
Yeah, well, and I love the title too, right? Like, how did you come up with Story House?
I wish it was like super spiritual. I do. But I took the trendiest, coolest girl that I know. She's 10 years younger than me. I took her to Chips and Salsa and I said, hey, could you brainstorm with me? I knew I wanted it to be about story because I think story work is so important. That's how our brains operate, that's how we view the world. And so and I do a lot of narrative therapy too, and we can talk more about that. But I wanted story in the name. I didn't know what else. And so we were looking at story counseling and all of that. And then Kendall, she said, why don't you just call it Story House? And I was like, oh, that's it. And so the idea of having this safe place that people could tell and heal and transform their story has just really connected with our context.
Hmm. It's just so beautiful, right? Because again, it's all about sharing our story and then creating a new story
Mhm.
with in health and wellness. And I love that you were so intentional with the name because the name then informs the vision and so forth and how people even find you. I know that
Mhm.
again, as we've indicated that at least in our area, there's a lot of counseling practices, but not a lot of that integration faith work. And so when people
Mhm.
look at the name of the organization, that can pretty much translate what they're going to get in moving forward. And so that's kind of our conversation today is what is therapy about? Why is it important? So let's start there. Like even just with what you would define therapy or psychotherapy or even the wording for it, how would you define that for a layman?
Mhm. That's a great question. I think how I would share with somebody would be that counseling is just practice to find healing with another human so that you can later do that with real humans in your real life. So we act like surrogates to them, and we provide a connection and healing to allow people to come in close. So we do a lot of attachment work. We do a lot of interpersonal work. So what that means is that we are truly ourselves in the room, and we can share, hey, here's how I'm experiencing you right now. Like I do this with teens all the time. They'll come in and they look like they hate me. They look so miserable, they're just like, oh, mom made me be here, which
Yeah.
fair. Like what teenager wants to go? I mean, there's some that like counseling, but most of
Yep.
them, mom and dad are signing them up and bringing them in. And so then to say to them, hey, I don't know how you're really feeling, but like what I'm experiencing from you and just the way that your face looks and your body language, to me it feels like you really don't like me. Is that true? And they're able to be like, oh no, actually I'm just, and they get to see themselves. I think you have to be a more experienced counselor to do that work well. We have to be really careful on how we bring ourselves into the room, but we're finding it be so healing for people. And then it's impacting how they connect with others. And then they can get the healing that they need sometimes out of therapy. I don't think everybody needs to be in counseling to be well. I think they need to connect with others to be well.
Mm, yeah. So that connection piece, tell us a little
Mhm.
bit more about that and why that is so powerful and
Mhm.
healing.
Mhm. Yeah, well, a lot of that comes from attachment theory, which talks about the two camps of attachment style. So there's the secure attachment and there's the insecure attachment. And the insecure attachment, usually this is formed in childhood, where people may have the posture to be anxiously attached. This is the camp of the people pleasers, the people who will do anything to have that connection. And then you have the avoidant, and they're going to push people away. When it gets rough, they're going to be like, I got this. I'm going to take care of myself. And then you have my personal favorite, which is the disorganized, which they kind of do a little bit of both. And you feel that push and pull from them. Right. And so that's hard for people to heal and move forward and even recognize in themselves. And so we help them see, what is their starting posture? Then how do we heal that? Well, one, how do we understand it? How do we heal it? And then how do we practice new ways to connect with others? I also just think that the gospel is about connection. God was like, oh, we're separate. This comes from Dr. Kurt Thompson's work, but he talks a lot about how we are separated from God, and God was so adamant to reconnect us, and he used Jesus to do it. And so I really see how this connects so well with what God's trying to do in the world. He wants us not only to be connected with him, but connected with others.
Wow, that's so good. Gosh, and using again as the example of Jesus and how we are supposed to be interacting in our environment as well as with obviously our creator and with each other. Now, there's tons of misconceptions about counseling. I know that even in like my intakes, the first time I meet with people, I almost have to give a rundown of like, okay, what is the myths you believe? Because that's inaccurate. I'm not going to fix you. I can't fix you. I can't change you. It's like I have to go over that in order to
Uh-huh.
move through it. So, what are some of the things that you're seeing within your practice where people are just like, misconceptions need to be put to rest?
That's so funny. Sometimes I'll ask clients, I'll say, hey, like, what movies have you seen about counselors? So I want to know, like, what have you seen? Because that helps.
Yeah,
Because sometimes they're like, am I supposed to lay down on this
I
couch? And I'm
know.
like, please
Ah,
don't, because it's so cozy in here. You'll take a nap. And that's an expensive nap. Like, you don't
yeah, it is.
want to do that. But so they just really don't know. I think that's a way that we've tried very hard to soften that startup for people. So, hey, the first time you come in, we're going to talk about your story. That helps people feel a little less clinical. And it feels like, oh, I can go share my story with someone. And so that's how we kind of ease people into it. But it's all over the place from I'm going to have to tell everything about myself. I'm going to have to tell my worst sin or whatever that is. We get a lot of that. And I'll tell people, hey, like, you get to go at your pace. You can have healing even if you don't share absolutely everything with me. That's okay. And I see people just like their body calms down when I say that. I also
Mm.
tell people I can't read their mind. I can get a lot from just seeing them and talking, but I can't read their mind, so I make sure they know that. I'm trying to
Mhm.
think. I mean, Paige, do you remember any from with your clients, like of things they
Yeah.
came in with?
Well, what's interesting, again, majority of my my background is with teens. So I would
Mhm.
have the parent come in first and tell me a little bit about the situation, which I love because it's context that I wouldn't have otherwise, as well as a perspective because I'm not living in their home. But
Right.
what I have to be really conscious of with the parent is that they're coming in with an agenda and they're coming up with a presenting problem that they want fixed.
Yeah.
And frankly, oftentimes, can I speak to the parents out there that bring their kids to counseling? Like we can't fix them. And oftentimes you're the problem. And this is coming from a parent who's, I've sent my kids to counseling because I feel like it is so good to have another adult who is healthy, who can be a sounding board, who can help them dig deeper because I can't be that for my kids. And so
Mhm.
there are certainly times I am certain that that counselor has been like, yeah, your mom's the issue. Can we bring her in and talk more about that? I'd be like, absolutely. Tell
Fix
me what
me.
I'm doing wrong because I want to be the best parent I can possibly be. So I know that's been one of the conversations I've always had with parents to be like, listen, I understand that you want your kid to talk to you more. Absolutely. I want my
Mhm.
kids to talk to me more. But what is an achievable goal or what is the root of the core issue here so that we can really give them the tools necessary so they can be healthy? Because
Mhm.
behavioral modification, that certainly is what the parent's goal is. But our goal as clinicians is how can we help them be healthy? And sometimes that does change the behavior. Other times it still doesn't change their relationship, but it does give them skills so that they can be a healthier adult moving on. So that's one of the first one that comes to mind. I
That is
think
a great one. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and it is. It's one of those things where people think therapy is all about them just talking and regurgitating all of their day to day. But therapy takes work. Therapy takes like digging deep into some of the stuff that they've believed since childhood. And they think that that's going to be easy. It's just like taking medication, right? That if you take these meds, it's going to make you happy. Well, there's so much more to that than the medication. And we are blessed if people have chemical imbalance or diabetes or cancer, like we can use medications to help remedy some of that. But the work that is necessary to identify the lies, the identity development that has been unhealthy, to work through trauma, like you girl, you and I know that takes work and it's not our work. We bring the
Mhm.
questions, we give the direction, but they're going to have to go home at the end of the night and be like, wow, now I have to actually put this into practice. And so I feel like some people think they're just going to come in and unload and we're just going to have this magic answer. I
Right.
wish that'd be amazing, but that
Mhm.
is just not always reality as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's almost like we give them weights and we're like, you can lift them up and you can get stronger, but we can't do the lifting for them. And that's hard. I do think sometimes people want that, like, hey, why aren't you fixing me? And it's like, oh, okay, let's go back to which I usually only get that from parents, because
Hmm.
parents they want quick results. And for teenagers, it takes time. It
Yeah.
just takes time. So
Yeah.
I think that's a really important one. They've got to do the work. It makes me just like so proud of my own clients because like I I push them hard and they know that. And they even like one told me, she was like, I was kind of coming up with this strategy so we could dodge the thing we're working on. And I'm like, I'm
Wow.
so proud of you for like telling me that up front. I would have caught it anyways, but like,
Yep.
look at you calling yourself out. But we push people hard and in a way that they can tolerate, but they do good work. And so when they leave, I'm like, I'm so proud of you. Like, I just think it's
Mm.
incredible that you're willing to look at your own story. Like, it's so easy to get lost in other people's stories right now. Like, we can watch the Netflix, we can read the book, we can look at TikTok, and we can live other people's stories and not our own. And so for my brave folk who sit on my couch and say, I'm willing to get the mirror out and do this, like, those are the most respectable people.
Mhm. Mhm.
I thought I'd maybe turn cynical as a counselor when you get to see so much of the dark and just be like, I don't know, not very hopeful for humanity, and that's just not
Mhm.
the case. Like, when you get to see people, like, work hard on their stories, it's it's a beautiful seat to sit in. Like, I'm so
Yeah.
thankful for it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, I love the blessing of having people come back after having several sessions and really just feeling almost hopeless, like they're continuing the patterns of destruction in their marriage, and we're not seeing much hope, and we've kind of given it all the best that we can, both as the clinician and as the client. And then they come back months later and they're like, man, we put in the work and look how good we are now. And so just reiterates the fact that if you put in the work, you will see the changes. It's planting those seeds. And so maybe going into that a little bit more of like, why do you think people are hesitant about putting in the work?
Hmm. I think that there's a lot of reasons. Like, I would even say personality type is one of those reasons. That's my reason for why I'm hesitant to put in my own work. I feel like I have to put a seatbelt on
Mm.
my chair at the counselor office. And like, even when I drive to my own counselor, I sit in the parking lot and I'm texting my husband, like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Yes.
I
That's so
don't.
funny.
Which, like, my personality is one that just runs away from my own emotions. And trust me, I understand the hypocrisy of this. I am a
Mhm.
counselor and I sit in other people's stories a lot. And so God's been really intentional with me to say, like, you've got to sit in your own. You don't get to just turn that off. And so I do. I think personality type can be that way. So some need a little more prompting than others. I think finances can get in the way. It can feel like, hey, this is too hard. Like, it's just too expensive to do this, or my insurance doesn't cover it, or things like that. So I think that's there. Um, I think spiritual warfare can be a part of it.
Mhm.
I don't think
Mhm.
um, I don't think the evil one wants us to heal. I think he wants us to stay stuck so that we can't thrive. We can't lean into our calling. We can't be good leaders or good moms or things like that. I
Yeah.
think generational cycles too. I mean, I could go on and on. There's so many barriers to
Mhm.
getting help.
Yeah, it's funny that you pointed out your own maybe hesitation or resistance. I totally can relate to that. When I go to my counselor and I sit in the parking lot, it's so funny. We're just like 5 feet away from getting started. I was like, man, it is so much work to go into my week and the things I want to work on. And it's like, oh, it's so laborious. But then what do we feel afterwards? We're like, man, I feel lighter. Yes, I have some goals to work on, some next steps. And it's like, it's invigorating. So it's so
Yeah.
funny how we resist in the beginning, but then realize how great it can be on the flip side, which is awesome.
I was telling my husband, I'm like, does everybody feel this way all day long, sitting in my parking lot waiting
I
to
know.
come in? Like,
Can
have this
you
like
imagine?
insecure moment. I don't think most people are as resistant to it as I am, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
thing.
It
So,
is, and to speak to a little bit of the hesitation for people, I think we have, especially those that come from a lot of hurt from other people, like in their relationships, is they've developed coping mechanisms that prevent them from feeling that deeply and with those sadness and rejection and abandonment. And so they've tried to push it down and stuff it for so long. To bring it up again is so counterintuitive that they don't want to feel it. And so their body gets anxious, their body gets tense, their mind starts racing because they're now in fight or flight. And so I think just for the listeners out there, if you feel like therapy could be really good for you, that maybe you've had a story where you just want to heal and grow from that, just be mindful. Your body and your brain will be like, no, nope, I don't need that. It's not for me. It's not my thing. And actually, that is a big sign that maybe this could be a good thing for you, because your body and your mind are saying, I can't deal with these deep emotions in the way that I want to anymore. And I really need to find help. And therapy is the best way to get that process started, which is really awesome. So, yeah,
mhm.
that was the other thing that I see. So, let's speak to the flip side of
Okay.
how is it a good thing? How is it valuable? How are you even seeing that this is something that God has even asked us to come alongside and heal from?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, there's layers and layers to this. I think God's honored when we steward our lives and our stories well. So I think if honoring God is important to you, that's a good thing, right?
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
I also think that it's hard to be human and it's hard to connect with other people. We are not prone to connect. We're prone to wander away from God and wander away from each other. And so learning to connect better with the people around you, like my husband, um, he started counseling during a hard season that we were in. This was a few years ago, and it was such a gift to me to know that he was going and talking with somebody and opening up and doing something that was really hard for him. And it was just like, it gave me a sense of assurance too. Like, he's being intentional and he's working through this. And then he was able to talk to me better about his emotions and feelings because he had already done it with his counselor. So the going to counseling can be a gift to your people, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think too, just from what I see this so much, this generational cycle of sin or unhealth. And so I have clients who are working so hard to break that pattern so that their kids don't have to do the work later.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that's really motivated me of, do I want to pass this down to my kids? You know, I don't. I know no matter what, I'm going to give them their own brand of messed upness that they're going to need to work through no matter
That's
how hard
right.
I try. But there's certain things that I am adamantly against handing over to them. And I want that cycle to end with me. And so counseling can help that. And then
Mm-hmm.
again, too, like, I want people to enjoy their lives. Like, they have so much that they can enjoy and do. And like, I don't know if there's a ton of people out there that are really thriving and enjoying every day. Anxiety is just so strong right now. And it's hard to battle it with screens and all the things. And so really helping people enjoy their lives is important to us.
I
So I
love
think
that.
counseling does that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is so powerful, right? And I think that's what makes me passionate about the work of counseling is I get to not only hear their stories, which I don't take for granted. I feel so honored that they can be so vulnerable with me because I realize my own resistance being vulnerable because of the fear that I'll be abandoned or rejected. So I take this so seriously when people share it, but like seeing them take those next steps, seeing them find some healing or those light bulb moments that energizes me so much. And that is the value of connecting with people, connecting with professional counselors as well. Is that they know where to go. They know how to ask questions because they're not doing the work. You're doing the work, but they get to facilitate that. And that is such a beautiful thing. And yeah, I'm very honored to be in this field. And I feel like it is a ministry that God has called us to, and that we get to walk alongside people. And so it is just getting over that initial fear and trying it out, which I think is really a big step for many
Uh-huh.
people out there, which is great.
Mhm.
So let's talk about those that are listening right now and they're kind of like on that potential next step, but they don't know where to start. Like, do you have any suggestions or encouragement on how people can take their next step towards healing?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think first doing a self assessment to say, where am I at and what do I need? I would say trying to start with your own context. Who is safe that you can talk with, that you can process how you're doing? And if you don't have those resources, then looking for a professional counselor could be really, really helpful. So it depends on need too. But I always tell people try out a counselor when you're not in crisis. Just try one out. I tell people to be really, really selfish about their counselor choice. It's not about the
Yes.
counselor's feelings. We are trained to be big grown adults that can handle when you say, I don't think you're the right fit. I don't
Yes,
think I don't think any counselor is the right fit for every person. Like, that's
that's
just
right.
not the way it works. Like, I want a counselor who has opinions, who wants to give who will give me facial expressions when I say something wild and crazy. I want her to be in it with me, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, that's what I want. I don't know what other people want. So, don't feel bad to try out a few and see. It shouldn't be awkward. I think that's important. Sometimes it can be awkward in counseling. I don't know.
Mhm.
I think sometimes that keeps people from counseling because they're like, "Oh, the counselor just like stared at me or
Yeah.
whatever."
Yeah.
um, I think it's
Mm.
getting better. I think the training is different than what it used to be. More counselors are trained to be in it with a client and walk alongside them rather than being this fancy pants expert, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's good.
but I think if you don't feel comfortable with that person, move on. Your life
Mhm.
is too short. Your money's too important. Your time is even more important. Pick a new counselor. So,
I love that. That's such good encouragement. Gosh. Well, Sarah, I have appreciated this conversation with you today. I appreciate all your wisdom and then just what you're doing for your community and the people that you see. So I would just love for people to know more about Story House. Where can they find that information?
Yeah, absolutely. So if they go to storyhousecounseling.com, they can see what we're about, see our story, see our counseling team, and just learn more about our ministry.
Lovely. Gosh, so great. Well, thanks again for your wisdom and joining me here today.
Thanks for having me, Paige.
I am certain you guys love Sarah as much as I do. I'm telling you, she is such a bright light in the counseling realm. And I just love what she is doing for our community, but also the way that she equips people, hears their story, and just loves Jesus so well. She's just an inspiration to me. And the fact that I never knew that story about my laundry. So I'm glad that she felt like we were connected in that way, that she can come to my house and I can be real as I want to be. Even here on this show, what you will get is authenticity always. So let's talk a little bit about the takeaways from my conversation with Sarah. I love the fact today we were talking about stepping into counseling and receiving hope and healing, because I've had a number of people who've talked to me about maybe their fear of getting into counseling, or they don't feel like they need counseling, or it's a joke and they don't think anything's valid about receiving counseling. Well, friends out there, I have to tell you that not only is this my practice and this is my career, but I have received counseling pretty much since I was a teenager, on and off throughout the years. And I know that I can't do it alone. And I love when she's talking about we have to be wise about who we choose as our counselor, because when we enter that space where we have to be vulnerable, we have to put in work, we have to receive feedback. And sometimes that feedback can be super uncomfortable because it's truthful and it highlights things that we need to work on and be better at. And sometimes, again, that can be really hard to hear. So, choosing the right therapist who can speak into our life to tell us that truth, to be that mirror for what we're experiencing or showing, can be so valuable. So, my first recommendation is ask around. Who is everyone else seeing? I work full time at a church, and so I'm oftentimes referring people out to different counseling practices. So I have a list where I know that those people are vetted, that they have done good work, that they might be a great fit for the individual who is asking. So asking for referrals can be one of the best steps. Secondly, when you are paired with a counselor, know that you do not have to stick with them. I kind of call it like speed dating. You're just going in there and showing up, and we can pretty much tell from the beginning, is this going to work or not? You can step away and say, can I have another counselor, or can you go to a different practice? So you might be worried that your counselor might be offended or their feelings might be hurt. Friends, that's not your responsibility. You are there receiving a service, and we want that service to be the best for you. So many counselors will fully understand that they're not always going to be a good fit for everyone, and instead want what's best for you. So take the initiative, be an advocate for yourself, and make sure that you're connecting with the right counselor. And here's an amazing resource out there. If you are looking for a Christian counselor in your area, go check out aacc.net. When you go on there, they will actually ask you some of the presenting problems, the struggles, and then with your zip code, pair you with someone that is local for you so that you can start taking that next step of finding the right counselor for you today. Again, that's aacc.net. And of course, that's also in our show notes as well. Another takeaway that I have is recognizing the value of getting counseling help and how that's a gift to your people. I loved how Sarah said that. You helping yourself prevents generational bondage from transferring to your kids, to your family. So think through the things that maybe you're still holding on to because of maybe the family of origin that you had, that you don't want to bring into your relationship with your kids or the environment that you're creating for your family. Seeking help and finding ways to grow in those areas of immaturity to health can be so valuable in helping transform your family life. So know that when you get counseling, you are actually serving your people as well. My final takeaway is Sarah was talking a little bit about the things that may make us resistant to receiving counseling. So I loved how she kind of broke some down. Like maybe it's your personality and you don't want to be transparent. Maybe it's money. Maybe there's even some spiritual warfare elements. There will always be reasons to not receive counseling. But when you start focusing on how this could be so much better for you so you can live a happy life, it is all worth it. Finances, for instance, is one of the biggest things that prevents people from receiving treatment. But when you block out your budget and you start seeing you're spending money on Starbucks, or in my case, tons of different books that I buy, because I'm a huge reader and I love to read, but how much more valuable it could be for me to go in an hour once every couple of weeks and really work and process with someone that asks the right questions, that helps keep me accountable and challenges me in ways to improve. That is priceless. And so when we start thinking through some of your resistance, why don't you start considering what does hold you back? And maybe those things can be renegotiated, as well as putting yourself as a priority. So, friends, thanks so much for joining me and listening to the show today. If you have any feedback or guests that you would love to hear on the show, I would love to hear from you. You can always email me at pageklingenpeel@gmail.com. We have a lot of exciting interviews coming up, so be sure to tune in again next time for another edition of Embracing Your Season.